Tons of good basketball that we will get to. And then there is the madness in Big D. Let's start in the NFL by running the hurry up. Top of the hour, Dan Graziano, what are the notes that people need to know?
Russell Wilson still looking for a home. He visited the Browns yesterday in Cleveland. He is scheduled to visit the Giants today in New Jersey. Still possibility for the Pittsburgh Steelers if Aaron Rodgers tells them no, but Russell Wilson not leaving that to chance. He's looking around to see what his other options are as well. Speaking of Aaron Rodgers, the Steelers and the Giants continue to wait on an answer from Aaron Rodgers. Both have expressed interest. Both have discussed contract parameters. Both are interested in signing him. They're just waiting to hear what he decides. Minnesota Vikings kind of lurking here. Hard to get a gauge on how serious their interest is, but they've had some internal conversations about what it would look like. And there's a perception out there that that would be Rodgers' first choice if they were interested. So we'll see where that ends up going. And then Cooper Kupp, wide receiver, former Rams Super Bowl MVP, a free agent, free to talk with any other team. Sounds like his market is, getting to a point where he's ready to make a decision. We've heard so many teams on Cooper Kupp. We've heard Cowboys, Seahawks, Patriots. There's been a fair bit of interest in him. There are some teams out there sort of seeing if his asking price will drop a little bit before deciding to sign him. But it's possible Cooper Kupp would have a new home here by the weekend.
So at first it looked a little hot and heavy. But the Cowboys are involved in anything, people start talking about it. It's looking a little bit less likely that that's going to be the scenario. But we'll wait and see on that. As far as the Cowboys are concerned, if you were just waking up and joining us, you missed a good deal of melodrama yesterday, which is what the Cowboys major in. It got very spicy as their longtime defensive end, DeMarcus Lawrence, had a lot to say about his former team after leaving. He spent 11 seasons there. He was the face of that franchise for a while. He signed a 3-year, $42 million deal to go to Seattle. And in his first interview that we're aware of in Seattle, he said this.
Dallas is my home. I made my home there. My family lives there. I'm forever going to be there. But, I know for sure I'm not going to win a Super Bowl there. So, yeah. We here.
Okay. So you knew that was going to attract some attention, and from among others, it did. Micah Parsons, who chimes in on everything, and in this case, he quote tweeted that by saying, "This is what rejection and envy look like. This is some clown stuff." Well, Lawrence didn't let that comment go unchecked. He responded, "Calling me a clown won't change the fact that I told the truth. Maybe if you spent less time tweeting and more time winning, I wouldn't have left." Those are two separate, fascinating sentences, both of them equally interesting. Matt, why are you laughing like that?
Because I feel like that tweet needs to eat the beat behind it. Because Micah Parsons just got torched by Tank Lawrence.
Yeah.
No lies told, though.
Right.
No lies told by Tank Lawrence. I mean, at this stage in a player's career, if you can't sell winning at the highest level, there's no way the player is going to take the discount. And for Tank Lawrence, this is a guy that's been in Dallas across multiple coaches, across multiple quarterbacks, across different cores of players, and the results seem to be the same. And you know why the results are the same? It's because Jerry Jones, in this ever-elusive chase for credit post-Jimmy Johnson, has undermined the authority of the head coach at every single turn within that franchise. And that has been an impediment to creating the kind of culture that it takes in order to have success at the highest levels. And G, I should know. I had to leave the Dallas Cowboys to win my damn championship. And the team that beat the best Cowboys team that I was a part of in 2007 was the New York Giants. And there was no reason from a talent standpoint that the Giants should have beaten the 2007 Dallas Cowboys, who had 13 Pro Bowlers. But they did on their way to winning Super Bowl 42. Mm-hmm. And the reality is that Jerry Jones still hasn't figured out that the best players don't always make the best team, but the best team always wins. The Dallas Cowboys haven't had trouble finding talented players, but they haven't figured out how to build a football team. And that's where the things are right now. I can't believe we're saying this. I was there in 2007. it's now 2025, and it's still the same problem.
It's 18 years later, yes.
And I look at it, and it's almost like Maverick and Iceman when you're watching Top Gun, where Iceman is Tank Lawrence, and he sees this young, talented kid that can do it all, and he's trying to get him to understand the sense of urgency which is needed to be able to win at the highest level and to do something that matters. When I first got to New England, I remember my cornerbacks coach saying to me, no, there are no team reunions. You don't just bring back the 2010 Tennessee Titans team. The only way you bring a team back is if you hoisted a Lombardi trophy and you're Super Bowl champions. And that's what you're playing for as a player. And for Tank Lawrence, he gets to Seattle, and whether it's John Schneider, whether it's now Mike McDonald, this is an organization that he probably feels like whether we're winning it or not, we're stepping and we're all marching in the right direction to try to achieve that goal. Where to your point, CC, Jerry Jones and the Dallas Cowboys, for years we haven't seen a move like that.
Baltimore Ravens, it was all about winning, right? And everything we did was dedicated to winning. It seems like in Dallas it's more about entertainment and all that type of stuff and being a brand and making money and being the most valued franchise. Listen, I never lost to the Dallas Cowboys because we always knew that they were front runners, that if we took them to deep water, no matter who it was, and as it came out, because they were Hollywood. They were Hollywood. They were a Hollywood team that was in Dallas that goes out to Oxnard. And a lot of those players walk around acting like they taking credit for what Emmett, Troy, and Michael Irvin did, right? They walk around with that pride. They have a sense of arrogance about themselves. You say, let me take y'all into this back alley and see if you're really about that smoke. And more times than not, they were never ready for that smoke.
And for those of us who are older, Roger Staubach and Tom Landry and Tony Dorsett and all of those, they have been a glamorous franchise for a very long time. But that's okay. They also were winning Super Bowls in those days. They were winning championships in those days. And now, by a wide margin, they have the longest drought of any team in the NFC of reaching the NFC Championship game. Every team in that conference has played in the NFL's Final Four more recently, in fact, much more recently than the Cowboys.
Yeah, and I think the problem is, look, DeMarcus Lawrence didn't leave because he couldn't win a championship in Dallas. He left because Seattle guaranteed him $18 million. I mean, let's put that right.
No
okay,
doubt.
So that's but he had something to say. Like he had been saving it up, right? I could make the case of like, why weren't you saying it when you were there? Like who lays down the law there and tries to make it all about?
Hold on, bro.
No, I'm asking.
Jordan Lewis did try to say it back in September. It just disappeared into the ether. But he said guys are not doing what they need to do during the course of the week to give us a chance to win on Sunday.
And it didn't
said it, and nobody paid attention to it.
And maybe that's what DeMarcus Lawrence is talking about. Maybe he's saying, no matter what we do, it wasn't going to catch because it wasn't going to develop that attitude, that relentless, all about winning attitude. And that's whether he's right or not is almost irrelevant because he's saying it, and you start to hear it like Dalton Schultz when he signed with the Texans talked about the tours and everything. Yeah. Now there's an external perception. You talk about when you played against them, how you thought they were soft. Like when we get close to the playoffs and Dallas is in the mix, you talk to people around the league and you hear a lot of that. Well, they'll always blow it. Right? That's become the perception of this team. Accurate or not, that is hurtful to your franchise. And it's going to make it does make it difficult to attract talent.
I want to pick up, Chris, on what you obviously seized onto there. The tone is not set by the leadership in the locker room. The tone is set upstairs. The tone is set by the owner who talks right after the game and then has a radio show on Tuesday. So it's impossible in that moment. If you're saying the coach can't take control of the circumstances, how is a player going to when Micah Parsons can have a podcast in which he names the top 10 quarterbacks in the NFL and doesn't name his own, in which CeeDee Lamb has a family member posting he'd be better off in Houston, I'd much rather him playing with C.J. Stroud, and to the best of our knowledge, nothing happens. Like there are no consequences for these things because they are part of the soap opera. They literally, when I was a kid, there was a soap opera on TV called Dallas. Yeah. They've now just sort of picked it up and moved it. And they like it. And it's okay. Look, it's worked. It's impossible to argue it hasn't worked. He could sell that team right now for $15 billion. So it's hard to argue with it working. But the point is, from a football perspective, that I think is where the problem is.
Well, one of the things that I learned being a part of the NFL for over a decade is that the locker room polices itself. Now, it's up to the head coach to empower the leaders in the locker room, but those guys police themselves. So the players have not absolved the blame. And I remember when they lost to the Green Bay Packers in the wild card round a couple of years ago, Tank Lawrence was one of the ones that said, we were too burnt out to play and be at our best. That's a cultural issue. When Micah Parsons, your best player, feels like he needs to respond to everybody that has something to say about the Dallas Cowboys, that's a cultural issue. Your best player lacks the maturity that it takes to set the tone for the team and to get them to focus on the task at hand. I mean, we can sit here and blame it all on Jerry Jones, but Jerry Jones ain't throwing no passes and Jerry Jones ain't making no tackles. That's the guys on the field that are responsible for that, and they're not doing a good enough job.
But
That's the thing, yeah.
Jerry Jones is setting the standard, right? He's setting the culture. He's also selecting the players that's supposed to come in there. It's not always about the best players. It's about the best collective team. And sometimes you got to bring guys in that has that type of leadership qualities. You can't just have talented players. You got to have leaders as well.
The last tweet in the sequence from DeMarcus Lawrence, where he says to Micah Parsons, you know, if you spent more time winning,
I'll read it.
Yeah.
Maybe if you spent less time tweeting and more time winning, I wouldn't have left.
I can't imagine that that's the first time DeMarcus Lawrence has thought that about Micah Parsons, and it makes me wonder what the internal perception of Micah Parsons is there. Yeah. He is an unbelievably good player, right? And when you have his level of talent, you know, people are willing to tolerate much worse than just, hey, he tweets a lot. But I wonder about the perception in that locker room of him if this is coming out now after.
Well, we heard Malik Hooker, the safety that was there a few years ago. He said the same thing about him tweeting and podcasting. But at the end of the day, when you're as good as a player as Micah Parsons, you find a way around it as an organization. Yeah. You just talked about building a team. You're on a team where you have one of the best players in the NFL. Because he maybe tweets or he goes on a podcast, you're not going to move him and say, oh, we need our best player to be our best leader. No, you figure out a way to surround leaders on this football team that dictate the tempo and dictate the tone of the team. That doesn't always have to be your best player. Is that the best scenario? Absolutely. When Tom Brady's on your team, he's your best player, your best leader, and your best competitor. That's the dream scenario. But in a Dallas Cowboys situation, that isn't the case. So you find a way to surround this team with players that can help move it in the right direction.
They've tried that. It doesn't work. Like, this is not fantasy football. We just can't keep collecting individually talented players
but you're not gonna win.
And expect that it's going to lead to the results. My whole point is this. Your culture has to be prioritized at some point. They haven't done that yet. You're wondering whether or not they can do that with Micah Parsons in the building as your best player. I don't know the answer to that. But the fact that they keep doing the same old thing and getting the same results,
you know that answer.
Something's got to change.
See, but you have to empower your leaders to put him in check. Just because you're your best player don't mean he can't.
He is your leader.
No, that he can't be your leader. Just your best player. We talk about Kevin Durant all the time, arguably being the best player, but he can't be your leader, right? And listen, easy sniper, don't come at me. I'm not saying it like that. But what I'm saying is, like, you know, I played with Ray Lewis, right? And for a long time, Ray Lewis was the best player on that team, but it was a long time when you were there where he wasn't the best player. But he was able to keep Suggs in check. He was able to keep Chris McAllister in check. He was able to keep Ed, and Ed Reed was, you know, maybe the best player for a long time in that stint. You have to bring in other players that can take this player to the side and say, man, we got to be better. He's a young player. You got to teach somebody in there. He didn't come into a place that had the culture that teaches him how to be a great leader. So you got to bring great leaders in to show him the other side and the responsibility of being a great player. And if he's going to get that money, it can't just be about what you do on the field. It's got to be what you do in the locker room as well. One
more thing, and then I'll leave it here. Again, he tweets, or he posts, Lawrence does, if you spent less time tweeting and more time winning, I wouldn't have left. There was no one on planet Earth who doesn't recognize and acknowledge how great a player Micah Parsons is. There are people who have raised the question, should they trade him rather than sign him to an enormous deal in order to reset, rebuild, whatever the word is, as painful as that would be. Would you be on that side?
Yes. Ooh. Yes, I would absolutely trade Micah Parsons. There are so many other reasons in terms of roster building that we could get into, but for all intents and purposes with this conversation, he is an impediment to developing the kind of culture that you need in order to win championships. Again, the best players don't always make the best team, but the best team always wins. There is no logical explanation for why the 2007 New York Giants beat the 2007 Dallas Cowboys, except for culture. That's the only explanation, but I mean, point blank, period.
I guess I'm wondering, like that Cowboys team won a whole bunch of games. Like we've seen Micah Parsons' Cowboys teams win a whole bunch of games. You're saying there's something missing in the culture that works for 4 months and then doesn't in January.
When you go against other good teams.
When you're playing against the other good teams.
Can I go back to what he just said?
I ain't trading Micah Parsons.
Yeah, I wouldn't do that either.
I'm not
saying.
You're forgetting, you can put the video up of him crawling after he's making the sack. He dominates a game. He dictates so much.
J-Mac, you talking to a D lineman. You think I don't know how pass rush helps win championships? You think I don't know?
So why we get
But it's not just about, one player. And that's what everybody keeps missing.
He helps
it's not just about
else.
How was the dynasty built in Dallas? They traded a guy named Herschel Walker one day, and you've got a lot of good players that came together and played together collectively as a group and created a culture and was able to win. Sometimes, he may be right to win, but maybe not right now.
So you trade Micah Parsons, and what leads you guys to believe that they have the infrastructure that's going to build this incredible team
Cowboys pretty good at finding players now. Will McClay pretty good at his job.
You're right. That's why they got Micah Parsons. That's why they got CD Lamb.
Okay.
They have the guys there, and they're building it with that team.
They're building what?
That's not
Whatever
enough.
What are they building? The same thing we see in the last 30 years.
If you trade Micah Parsons and the same people are in charge, I don't understand why you're saying it's going to be different now.
So you're giving them $45 million a year?
Well, if you would have paid him before, it wouldn't have had to be 40.
Well, that's a whole other problem.
You got to do it now, yes.
They've made a lot of other of those kinds of mistakes, like structural mistakes, building mistakes, not paying players early rather than paying them late. All the Howie Roseman stuff that we've talked about here, what the Eagles have done so well, pay a player a year early and give up on a player a year early, but as opposed to the mistakes that some other people do. So that's a whole, that's sunken cost. You're not undoing what you did with Dak. You're not undoing what you did with CD Lamb. The bottom line of it is, Graziano, you and I had a conversation. I posted something on Sunday. How long ago does this feel like? When the Cleveland Browns worked out their deal with Myles Garrett. I saw it. I was and watching, SportsCenter's coverage of it and everything, and I thought to myself, am I the only person who thinks this is a terrible idea? And I sort of very hesitantly posted, I think that they should have traded him for a king's ransom, expecting to get obliterated for it. Instead, everyone agreed. Everyone agreed. This situation feels similar to that to me.
There are some key differences.
For example?
One, Myles Garrett had said he doesn't want to play there anymore.
Right.
So to go out of your way to sign a guy that doesn't want to be there is a little bit of a shaky decision. Another is that the Browns don't have a quarterback. They don't have a number one wide receiver. The Cowboys have the stuff you would be wanting to get if you traded a player like that. They need to build out the infrastructure of their roster a little bit better. They were very good at that for a number of years. They had good rosters and good teams, but they haven't been able to cash it in. And now,
isn't the way you do that by getting a lot of draft picks and thus drafting a couple of offensive
sure, but I mean, it's not like they're short on draft picks, though, right? It's not like the Vikings, I think, have 4, right? They don't need more picks. They just need to do better with them than they've done the last couple of years.
I mean, talent breeds tolerance, right? And maybe if DeMarcus Lawrence is speaking, like we've all had teammates, and we don't tell the stories about the stuff it is to deal with them on a daily basis. And maybe Lawrence knows a little bit more than what we are privy to, and maybe it's not just all sunshine and roses inside of that building.
I don't know what would give anyone the impression it's sunshine and roses inside of that building.
I remember I had covered the Giants early in Odell Beckham's career, and Odell was he's got a bad rap, but there were some things that went on that drove the coaches nuts. And I asked Tom Coughlin once, at what point does that sort of override the talent? And he said, with this level of talent, never.
Right.
You just manage it.
Well,
I think that's where Micah Parsons is.
Managed him right out of the job, too.
That's exactly right. That's like the old.
Eventually,
he was
but you know those type of players where
I've seen it.
You've seen the young guy come in that is immensely talented, and you try to explain to him, you're going to have to change because at some point your talent level goes from this high, and year after year it's going to drop. And we know those organizations at the top, we're going to put up with it as long as we have to. But when we can find your replacement, then we will.
You're not going to find a transformational player.
Herschel Walker was at the time when Herschel Walker was traded. He was one of the best players in football. And he was thought
to be the best running back in the NFL at a time when that meant more than it does now.
And he became the foundation which Dallas built a dynasty on.
It's like the story that Belichick told recently, where he went to tell Bill Parcells when Parcells was the head coach of the Giants and Belichick is the defensive coordinator. And he went and he told him, I just thought you'd want to know that Lawrence Taylor was late for the meeting this morning. And Parcells said, well, why the hell did you have the meeting?